Hello, everybody. Welcome to Live with Karen and Sarah today. And we have people from all time zones welcoming you today and looking forward to having you connect with us today. Let me take a quick minute here to introduce you to my colleague and friend, Sarah Schwab. And Sarah is in Geneva area, and I am in Phoenix, Arizona. Good afternoon, Sarah.
Hey, Karen, how are you?
So happy that you're here to join me in this last session I'm going to do on applied improv and negotiation. And we're going to talk with Sarah a lot more at the end of our hour about what she does and how you can get in touch with her. So welcome, everybody, to today's program. And I know that the time zones are very crazy right now, and we all can find each other at the exact same time. So thank you all for joining. So let me review a little bit of what we plan to do here today. And many of you have already joined us for our programs on applied improv and negotiation. And what I'm going to do today is to spend a little time integrating in some of the work that we're doing in what I call the action learning exercises that we use in applied improv and the kinds of things that we're doing with our work at the Experience Accelerator. So we're going to talk a little bit more in just a second about what do I mean by applied improv, and then also going to look at how do we become more conscious of our focus and attention in terms of what we have learned about power over approaches versus power with approaches, and why this kind of preparation is really impactful. And one of the things that we look at in the world of quantum and quantum negotiation is paradox. And this particular session is going to look at the paradox between that tension between preparation and improvisation. How can we be prepared with some of the basic ground rules of how to build partnerships and to build partnership qualities in our negotiations and collaboration? But then how can we be open, flexible, and buoyant to improv and to be more creative with each other? And how all of this is so important in terms of our awareness, in terms of collaboration, and why it's so important to anchor ourselves when we are in difficult collaborations. We find that collaboration is one of the best vaccines for the COVID disruption, as we've said very, very often here. So once again, before we start, I want to make the distinction between what we mean by negotiation. What do we mean by collaboration here? Because there are so many definitions. And what we're going to look at is negotiation anytime we're problem solving, creating something new, or sharing limited resources. And there is no monopoly of power, meaning one has more leverage, has more power than the other. We have to look at ways that we can be much more collaborative, that we can even share in what we mean by collaboration or what the interest might be. Now, so we know what we need. Negotiation is a means of getting what we need from others, but power is the element that we use to get what we need. And that's why we're making the distinction here today between power with and power over. And we're going to do a little exercise later where we're going to ask you to define what you might see as power over and power with. And often when we're looking at power over strategies, we have this issue where there's often coercion, there's defensiveness. And in the improv world, the applied improv world, we mean that there's a lot of no's and there's a lot of buts rather than a lot of yeses. And the focus when we use power over is to really show a lot of control over the agenda, control over the other party, control over the entire process. Whereas with power with, we are looking not for coercion and direct persuasion of another, but we want to build an environment so we can actually have what we would call power with. And that means that we create more value with each other. We have many ways to prepare. There are many, many different ways that we can actually co-create together. So we are going to spend some time talking a little bit about those tensions. And we often want to use power over, but that we're going to encourage power with. So we'll have some questions a little later in the program that will test this for you. Now, I'd like to turn this over to Sarah.
Great, thanks. Thanks so much. If we could just pop the slide up here, because here you're looking at a couple of years worth of effort in terms of what we define are the assessment criteria for mindsets for agile collaboration. And the great news here is that, you know, these are things you may already be doing subconsciously or consciously. And if you aren't, some of these are pretty simple just to put in place right from the get-go. So if we start with that one around positive intent, you know, Karen is such a role model to us all. You know, she opened up the conversation, displaying a lot of positive intent about the relationship, about the time that we're going to have together today. And things like collaboration building, this is, you know, being open, asking questions, being genuinely curious as to your partner's, you know, perspective, understanding, and jointly defining agenda. You know, this looks like, here's a couple of things, Karen, that I'd like to talk about. What did you have on your mind for our conversation today? And so when I partner with Karen, every single conversation we open up like this, and it's amazing how good it makes you feel that each other is just giving each other the space to share what's on their priority list and what they want to make sure that they get out of the conversation. So those are some pretty tactical, practical things that you can bring into your very next conversation or meeting. Some of them, and if we could just make the slide slightly bigger here, defining a shared purpose, getting clear on your own interests and theirs. These we typically see our learners find as slightly more challenging. And why? Because you are using some of those improv techniques that Karen referred to earlier. You can prepare those type of questions and that type of exploration, which is really important. But when you're in the moment, you do need to sort of react in quite an agile fashion. And so to that end, what we see is those you know, leading with positive intent, collaboration building, jointly defining agenda. If you're just starting out your journey in this area, those are probably the things we would have you concentrate on. And then for those who are more experienced, getting to shared purpose, getting clear on your own interests and theirs, are things that you will find will supercharge or turbocharge your collaboration efforts even more. And we're going to give you some practical examples of those in a minute. And let me just quickly touch on the last point, conversational balance. So the beauty of technology today means that we have developed machine learning algorithms that allow us to, in seconds, analyze in a given conversation how much time I spoke versus Karen speaking. How long was my longest monologue? So things like this are very strong indicators of whether you are dominating a conversation overly or perhaps being overly passive in a conversation. And the fact that we can pull these data points out and share them back with you almost instantaneously brings a whole other dimension to this idea of conversational balance. And, you know, oftentimes people don't realize they're talking too much. And probably with that in mind, I'm going to be quiet now, hand the ball back to Karen, and I'll see you in a few minutes.
Okay, let's go back to the slide that we have up on power with, power over, just for a second, because a lot of what Sarah has just mentioned are the nuts and bolts of what we call power with. And a lot of what you noticed here are these sub-behaviors that really help us understand how do we engage our partnership to share? How do we encourage others to share with us? And a lot of the behaviors that Sarah is talking about and illustrating are in that power with category. So now let's take a look at what do we mean by applied improv. And some of the ways that we integrate applied improv. And applied improv basically means that we apply some of the techniques that we've learned in the world of acting and comedy, that kind of creativity, building on experiences. This is what we mean by being prepared to improv with another is going to require some preparation on our part about listening, about being able to think about taking turns. It's about turn taking in improv. The best creative improv comes from that kind of turn taking. So what we are going to do now is introduce you all to a couple characters who are going to help us illustrate this. And we are going to have you look at 2 questions while you go through this exercise. And our producer is going to track these questions while we are in part 1. The question number 1, what power over strategies do you see Carla and Joe using? And then in the second part, our producer is going to track what power with strategies are Carla and Joe using. So I'd like to welcome you all now to our characters. Let's take a look at our characters here. And we are going to basically see me as Joe. And you're going to meet someone here by the name of Carla. So let's take a look at Carla and Joe. And basically, we're going to get a little bit of a background as we start this story from Carla.
Hey, so my name's Carla. I work for a company called Technology Arc, and I'm a project manager. I'm leading a pretty innovative but somewhat complex new product launch. It's a predictive maintenance solution for our Internet of Things systems, and it's got a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of subcontractors, a lot of partnerships integrated into this solution. And it's a super exciting product, but as you can imagine, it's been a pretty challenging time over the past year. You know, the good news, the demand's sky high. We've got orders coming out the wazoo for this particular new launch. The bad news is that we've had significant supply chain issues. We've been having trouble getting hold of critical components like sensors. And as a result, we haven't met any of our revenue targets. And it's putting quite a lot of pressure, if I'm honest, on us, on me, and our subcontractor partners. Now, I'm about to have a call with Joe Tamiz. Now, Joe heads up a small but pretty innovative scale-up company. That company is called Sharpest Technologies. It's a critical subcontractor of ours in this new launch. Last year, we signed a revenue share agreement with them. That allowed us to access their AI software and services, and in return, we're giving them a share of the revenue of this new product launch. But the problem is that Joe hasn't seen any money from this launch, as we haven't been able to ship anything because that's sensor issue. We should have booked, she should have booked over $1 million of revenue by this point, and she's not seen a cent. I'm guessing she's not particularly happy about that. We're just going to have to see how the call goes. But she needs to understand that Sharpest is pretty lucky to count Technology Arc as a customer, given they're quite young in their tenure, and to have a customer like us is pretty amazing.
Well, I am Joe, and I am a founder of a fast-paced moving environment. I'm a founder of a very small company, and I'm completely under a lot of pressure, especially financially. But I'm very, very eager to engage with Technology Arc initially. But now I'm feeling pretty let down and disappointed because all the promised revenues have not actually materialized. And I like a lot of concrete examples, and I like a lot of follow-up. And in this case, Carla has really been disappointing. And in many ways, I feel oppressed by her because she is such a big company. And in particular, she's not very good with her communication. So I'm pretty stressed about cash flow issues, and I got stomach aches and neck aches all the time. I'm just having a hard time. So I know that Tech Arc is really big, and Carla couldn't possibly understand what it's like for us over here. I know that the exclusivity agreement is ending soon, and I'm exploring some other people to partner with. And I know that there are other companies on the market, but nothing is close to ours. So I know we're in pretty good shape. Unless something really amazing happens here with Technology Arc, I just think this relationship is over. But I'm about to go on a Zoom call with Carla after waiting so long to hear from her.
Hey, Joe, what's up?
Well, we're busy. I'm very stressed.
Well, look, I want to talk about the market and supply updates. I want to go over our revised forecast. I'm assuming you got the email I sent.
No, I didn't see it. I've checked several times.
Okay. Look, I sent it last week. Joe, we're all busy. I've got problems all over the place. It would be helpful if you were prepared
Really?
for this call. Yeah.
Really, I didn't get it.
All right. Well, here's the deal. I know you're probably pretty disappointed. We haven't met those revenue ramps that we talked about. But to be honest, as you've not been anywhere else different than I have. It's not really our fault. We've had a bunch of supply chain issues. One of our critical suppliers, let us down. We haven't got the sensors we need for this project, so that's kind of the reason why you haven't seen the revenue that we agreed.
Well, yeah, I'm really disappointed, but it's interesting how you seem to blame others for your lack of follow through.
Where have you been? The whole world's been blown up. Everyone's got supply chain shortages, Joe. Come on, let's get in the real world here.
Well, of course, it's all understandable, and it's unfortunate for all of us, but really don't patronize me. I have a business to fund. I understand the global situation.
Well, all I'm asking is for you to be patient, Joe. This is going to be really big when it gets going. Really big. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was thanks to this revenue share agreement that you were able to close your Series B venture capital round. Am I wrong on that, remembering that?
Well, that this is an important part of what we're doing as we're starting to move into the Series C. So, but it actually creates many more problems because we were promised the higher revenue and you haven't delivered.
Well, like I said, there's not much more I can do at the moment. We are qualifying in some new suppliers. Things are going to come back online really soon. So, you're just going to have to be patient. I'm sorry. I know it's tough, but, we're all in this together.
Well, it's getting ridiculous. It's fine for you to say as a big company and you don't face the same kind of cash flow every day issues we have.
Hold on, we all got cash flow. We're all watching cash flow pretty carefully here, Joe. So, I guess the next thing that is going to be a question from you is whether we can make you an advance. And I just don't think I can make that fly internally at the moment. Everyone's watching cash flow.
Well, then I think I need to bring up the fact that the exclusivity agreement is coming to an end this week. Do you realize that? And I also am looking at, and I have a few others lined up to partner with. So if I really don't want to continue on this, I really am prepared to walk away.
Well, if I were you, I would be quite careful about making big statements like that, Joe. You know, I think you're pretty lucky to count us amongst your customer base. You know, I'd be a little bit cautious about walking away from that agreement. You know, this is the big leagues now. You get a reputation like that for being flaky. No one's going to want to do business with you.
I'm actually feeling oppressed by you right now. It feels like you could have been at least straight with us on the communication front. I am really stressed about this cash flow issue, and I've got aches and pains all the time. I'm just exhausted. You have no idea what we're going through here. TechArc is a really big player. You just don't have the same kind of issues we have. And I know that there are not other tech companies in the market right now close to ours. So unless there's something really amazing you have to offer here today, I really think this relationship is over. And I would like to just end this today and come back with something more meaningful.
Are you serious? Are you seriously ending the call now? Gee. Whoa.
Okay, audience. Let's see your comments on what kind of power over strategies did you see Carla and Joe use? And it goes very, very quickly. And it's almost like a default mechanism that they go quickly into, and what we almost call just unconscious defense mechanisms. And both of them are faced with a lot of stress. Both of them feel that there's a lot of scarcity in terms of what's happening in their own businesses. They need to have cash flow. They need to have dispensers. So their thinking is extremely focused on scarcity. They're both feeling really afraid and stressed. Physically, you can see that they're pushing against each other all the time, and they all have lost focus on what some of their shared purpose might be. So let's see if there's any comments on what you think were some of the power over strategies. All right, I see one from here. Here's one. The walk away is a threat. The walk away is a threat, and there's even a lack of empathy, much more coercive, controlling behaviors that we saw on their part. It's like even the big company uses organizational power and authority over the other. So yeah, so now you're starting to see that this is a less open, expressive, and there's very little room for improvisation here. And without thinking about it, their preparation was all about how can I be more defensive? How can I be more controlling in that call? So let's go back and let's go take a look at what happens as Carla does a little reflection.
So, you know, I took a look, took a few steps back from the situation, and, you know, I have to say I was totally emotionally hijacked in that call, and wasn't really prepared, if I'm honest. And, you know, this is a really important partnership for our company. You know, the product's not going to launch without Sharpest Technologies tech in it. And that's not going to be good news at all. We've got so many delays already. So that's one thing I just need to be really mindful of. And, you know, after all, if the launch fails, it's not actually going to be very good for my career either. So there's another thing that I need to sort of reflect about. So I met with my manager, debriefed with her about this, kind of owned up that I wasn't on my best day. And she suggested that I take the Experience Accelerator course on Mindsets for Agile Collaboration. It was pretty good. You know, they talked about stuff relating to collaboration building, you know, how to define an agenda and stuff like that, empathy, active listening. So stuff I kind of knew. but I hadn't really thought hard enough about this idea of preparation and anchoring myself. So, I haven't been sleeping. I've just been all over the place. So physically, I just was not in a good place to have that conversation. And, I'm worried, terribly worried about, the impact of this launch delay on a bunch of other things, including the P&L for Technology Up. And the other thing that I learned is that I hadn't really thought about why this project was so important for me. And actually thinking about, I'm really passionate about, the well-being and the quality of life of the elderly. And this, these are the ultimate end users of the solution. And so, thinking about why this is so important to me, actually, prompted by the Experience Accelerator, really, I don't know, it just gave me a different perspective. So I jotted down a few reflections that I want to explore with Joe today. We're going back onto a Zoom call, and by the way, it was me that did initiate it. I thought it was kind of the least I could do in terms of taking the leadership role there. So number one is I'm not quite sure what frame of mind that Joe is in and how she sees the partnership moving forward. So I need to be mindful of that. I know that Sharpest Technologies, as a young scale-up company, must be under huge financial pressure. You can't just have $1 million out of your revenue goal in the previous 6 months and not feel an impact there. So I should probably try and figure out how we can help them there. And Joe's right. Legally, given the provisions of the exclusivity agreement, she can just walk without any legal repercussions whatsoever. So I kind of need to unpack what it's going to take to renew that exclusivity agreement. So we'll just kind of see how this call goes. But those are going to be the things that I'm thinking through when I meet with Joe here shortly. Hey, Joe. Hey, how are you?
Wow, very busy, and pretty focused on thinking about what our next steps are going to be over here. We've got bigger issues to talk about.
Yes, yeah. And if I might just start with an apology, a sincere apology. On our last call, I wasn't at all empathetic to your concerns. I just kind of, just pushed forward on my agenda. I didn't really listen actively. And I just want you to know that I'm really sorry for that. I completely wasted your time on that call. And as I, had some time to reflect, I just wanted to apologize.
Well, thank you for changing that up. I thought it had been pretty unprofessional working with you so far, and really don't like being blamed for this horrible situation.
Yeah. I recognize that I have broken trust between us, and I need to take accountability for that.
Okay, well, let's give it a try. I'm not that optimistic, but I'll wait to see what you have to say.
Well, I appreciate that. I think that's very, very big of you. And I would like to start off with saying that I am really optimistic about this collaboration that we have, despite all the issues we've encountered. The pre-orders on this solution, Joe, are massive, and I think that we're going to make a huge impact when we can get to the point where we're at launch. And I think the supply chain issues are on the mend, and I'm really feeling quite good about how this is going to look moving forward.
You're optimistic. What has really changed here?
Yeah, I am optimistic, and I know that might sound weird given our last call, but we've had a number of things happen in the past week that really put us on a much better footing. And I'm confident, even though the start was super messy, and we totally take responsibility for that. I think we'll look back in a year from now, and we'll come at this project with a really different perspective.
Well, I get that we can talk differently with each other, but in the end, what we really need right now are solutions.
Yeah. And I'm wondering maybe we could start there in terms of, should we agree together what we want to get out of this particular call?
Well, for me, I just need solutions, period. That's my agenda. And the shortfall in revenue is an issue. And what can you do about that? And I want to talk about the next investment round. And I want to know what safeguards can be put in place to make sure that I don't get embarrassed again in the next investment round.
Yeah, those are excellent points, and we definitely want to help with your next investment rounds. We know how important that is to companies at your stage of development, and I'd also like to talk about the production ramp that we're seeing, coming up next week on our side.
Yeah, I want to address that.
And that's for today. Is there anything else you want to make sure we cover? I understand.
At the end, I just want a different situation. We just need to turn this around.
Yeah. And then if we think about not just today, but like in a month from now, what else should we be considering, in that kind of time frame?
Well, paying my suppliers. I haven't been able to pay my own suppliers.
Yeah. Well, why don't I start with the revenue ramp, and then we can talk about the cash flow situation and so on. So we're in a position with our sensor suppliers where they're actually shipping as we speak. So we're going to be able to start shipping our own solution next week. So we'll be making payments, actual payments, fueled by proper revenue within 2 weeks. But I realize that if you're in a position where you're not necessarily being able to pay suppliers, I imagine that could have, maybe employees as well, that is really challenging situation to be in. So the good news is I anticipate by the end of June, so just in a couple of short months now, that we'll be in a position to have caught up that $1.5 million revenue that we've been missing for the past 6 months. So we'll be fully back on track and then ramping up according to the original schedule.
Really?
Yeah. But let's talk about cash flow. I'm guessing that 2 weeks, it feels quite short in some ways, but maybe quite long to you in terms of, when you needed it, which was like 3 months ago. So tell me more about, where you're at and how acute that situation is for you.
Well, like I said, it's the suppliers, and now I'm in a crunch to make payroll. The situation is even more critical than you might imagine.
Yeah. So obviously really critical. So ASAP, it sounds like would be helpful. So if I could provide you with a 3-month advance against those first 3 months of missing payments, would that be something that could go some way to plugging that financial gap?
Yeah, that's a help, but I need you to guarantee that you would commit to that.
Yeah, I can understand. We've not exactly followed through on our promises to this point. So I do come to this meeting with the authority fully signed off to be able to execute that 3-month advance. And so, as soon as we get out of this meeting, I can initiate the wire transfer and it'll be in your account first thing in the morning.
Good. Excellent. And we're really concerned about the investment round.
Yeah, I was going to say, what else is on your mind? So talk to me more about the investment round. What's getting in the way of your investors closing that Series C?
Well, you can imagine our current investors have lost complete confidence in our forecasting. So now we either need to turn them around or we need to start over with a whole new set of investors.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I can imagine. Well, I can totally identify with the forecasting challenge. And so just a couple of immediate thoughts. Let me try them on you for size and you can tell me whether they'd be helpful or not. But I recognize that the forecasting lack of confidence is coming completely from us and our inability to have delivered. So we've done this with a couple of different companies before. What if we were to write a letter to your investors explaining the situation? We can go into some detail, and then that would sort of explain why you've missed, your forecast by such a great deal. And I guess probably the second option is less attractive to you because that's going to take longer in terms of due diligence and so on. But we do have a roster of investors who always are coming to us asking for, great companies to invest in. To the extent that we can create a couple of additional warm introductions for you, that is something I can just pick up the phone today and get that rolling.
Well,
How do
I
those
think
two
that
options
could
sound?
go some of the way to improve this situation. Yeah, right.
Yeah. What would take it all of the way?
Well, we need to talk about this exclusivity agreement. It's about to expire, and I may need to start looking for other partners.
Yep. I can appreciate, you have your trust is an all-time low with us. And I guess my question to you, Joe, is if we were able to do those things that we've talked about, so the cash advance, the letter to your investors, the warm introductions to those new investors, what would you say about sort of waiting 3 weeks or so until you can see those actions having been executed before you start initiating conversations with those other potential partners?
Okay, I like the advance you're committed to. Keeping that on a rolling basis in case we miss the forecast, and introducing us would be good. All good. Yeah, we can wait some time on that. I guess the only other thing I would like is if we could actually change this to a 60-40 in terms of our revenue share.
So if I understand you right, so we're currently at 50-50 on the revenue share.
Right.
So you're asking to recast, if you will, the terms of the agreement.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a tougher sell. I'm not saying that that's off the table, but if you would be willing to watch us execute as planned over the next 3 weeks, I'm more than happy to put the additional, rolling guarantee in. That's not something that I have signed off, but I can get that signed off. Although I'm pretty confident, like I said, we'll be able to ramp up quickly. So at this stage, adding back in the rolling guarantee, and then perhaps revisiting the split in 3 weeks. How do you think about that?
Yeah, that's good. Very good.
Okay. Okay. Is there anything else that we should cover off today, Joe? I know you're super busy, so I don't want to take too much of
Yeah.
your time.
Yeah, this is good. Let's just take each problem now as they come and keep building our trust on this. For me, it's the reliability and follow through on all of our promises and better communication so we can rebuild our trust.
There is one more thing. If you've just got a couple more minutes, I'm conscious that we jump straight into this, relationship. I think you and I are both pretty, operations execution focused. But it does mean that I don't necessarily have a real understanding of what matters to you about this project. So if we were to fast forward a year from now and everything's back on track, why is this project so meaningful for you?
Well, thank you for asking. I think about this a lot because this is really part of a lifelong dream I've had to make a real contribution to the new world of technology. And for me, it's so exciting because this project would validate all the work and thinking and dreaming that I've had about building this new company. I would be thrilled and excited to make this work for you because I've always believed, as a woman in the technology field, it's been hard to break through. And it would just have so much meaning to me that I could make this happen. And I believe in all the people that work with me here and what they can contribute. And it's all been very difficult. And I just have always believed in my dream. So your support would mean everything to me. If I could have that support, that would be so inspirational to me.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I mean, I can only imagine female founder, running a deep tech scale-up company. There's not many of you around. And so I could totally relate to what it would mean to you. And thank you for being so open and sharing that. If I can maybe just share what's important to me. So I've got this deep passion for improving the quality of life of our elderly people, and this is what we're offering, what we're building here is actually going to have a real impact on the quality of lives. Our elderly people are going to be able to adjust and control their heating costs more effectively with our system. They're going to be warm. When seeing what happened in Texas a few weeks ago just broke my heart, because you knew there was so much suffering there. And so for me, if we get this right, it's going to have a meaningful impact on people's lives. And that maybe sound a bit Pollyanna-ish, but it really does fire me up.
Well, thank you. I understand that. And thank you for sharing. Let's do this together. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Joe. You take it easy. I'll get
Bye.
that wire transfer, all those things lined up.
Good. Okay, so takes a lot of thought to move into the power with strategies. So wanted to see if there are any comments here for looking at power over. What power with strategies did Carla and Joe use? And this scenario that we just role played here at the end just shows how deliberate and how much the basic ground rules were that Carla had committed to upholding throughout the process, even when Joe was still extremely defensive. So some of the comments I see are power with means listening. Power with also means contributing. Any comments that you see, Sarah?
Yeah, I think the one that struck me here is around that it feels quite awkward to go from the operational stuff to the why, but that the physical reaction of both of us was something that the participant had sort of spotted. Our body language changed, our facial expressions changed, and that's because we're activating a different part of the brain, Karen, right?
Right, exactly. And this is something that we're learning in the neuroscience of being completely cognitive around your preparation limits our ability to engage the other parts of our emotions, our energy in the physical dimension, the spiritual dimension of things that we believe in and that we care so much about. So those are really important elements to think about in terms of preparation. Any other comment you would like to say, Sarah, about power with, especially one who is playing that role where you have to do the power with?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because when we started off and you were still pretty annoyed with me, I had an emotional reaction to that, even though obviously, we're in character. I had an emotional reaction that I needed to pay attention to keep calm, remember my preparation, and to keep my curiosity high, whereas my emotional reaction was to go back on the attack. So maybe, Carla's still got some work to do, but I think the thing that she noticed was this emotional reaction, whereas in the first conversation, she didn't at all.
Well, let's have you, Sarah, talk a little bit about the Experience Accelerator here. Let's go to the slide introducing the Experience Accelerator platform. And what does this mean, Sarah?
Yeah, so what you've just watched today is something that I feel very passionately about, which is deliberate practice and fast cycle feedback is something we really need to do in order to improve our behavioral skills. And so a couple of years ago, I stepped out of my nice high paying salaried corporate role and started my own education technology company just to do exactly what I've said. And if we can sort of move on to the next slide. So it's a fully virtual platform that has 5 key learning journeys. And Mindsets for Agile Collaboration is a program that I'm super proud of. We've built in collaboration with Karen, and we're seeing some just tremendous, impact. So basically, phase 1 is where you learn some of the frameworks or techniques that you should be applying in your behavior. Phase 2 is when you get quizzing, you get reflecting on what you've just learned. And then step 3 is about practicing in a warm-up kind of sense with your webcam. So you record short video footage and in response to prompts from the platform. And those are sort of the chunked components that you will then use in phase 4, which is a version of what Karen and I have just done, where you meet with one of our live tutors and you role play out a certain situation that you've prepared in advance. And phase 5 is, fast cycle feedback. So we give you a feedback report that's generated both by our human coaches and our machine learning analytics that tells you what you've done well, and if there's any areas that you can improve, and if there are areas, what you can do to improve that. And I think what we see is there's huge amounts of money left on the table at mid to large size companies because leaders or collaborators don't have the necessary behavioral skills, and this impacts change projects. It impacts time to market. It impacts employee productivity, many other metrics. And so I'm on a bit of a kind of a journey and have a real passion for helping to improve the quality of behaviors at work. So if you can, I think just move on to the next slide, that would be great. And this one we probably want to blow up a little bit. Because the platform actually works, and it's quite rare to be able to get this type of before and after analytical information about the impact of the learning journey that you've delivered. So what you're looking at here is 3 of the sub behaviors that we previewed before we went into the role play: collaboration building, leading with positive intent, and jointly defining the agenda. And what we did with a group of MBA students recently was measured their performance before on those 3 attributes. We put them through the platform, and then we measured their performance afterwards. And you can see up to 65% improvement, some even more. It was super interesting in terms of improvement from those who perhaps performed less or least well in their before scenario. So I think we're very proud about the impact that we're able to bring, and it's so rewarding to see students and executives and leaders say that they're able just to take these very practical insights and apply them immediately in their day-to-day work. And that for me is just music to our ears, because that means that we're making a difference.
I wanted to just congratulate you, Sarah, on all of the hard work that you've done. And I'm grateful that you've invited me into this particular project. And it has brought me to this stage in my life that I actually feel like I have a lot of products and classes, and I have some materials that I can share with others and expand my classroom. My classroom has always been in face-to-face, and I loved working with executives and MBAs and EMBAs all over the world. So I am thrilled that this is a big launch into a huge classroom out there. And I really believe that the way we use quantum negotiation with our anchoring on all of our 5 dimensions helps us to be extremely buoyant in whatever world we're working in, education, in technology, in healthcare. And I also wanted to comment that there's so many of you out there who are joining us today are coaches. And what I just wanted to point out, that something that Jody has mentioned here, is that she says that she's so struck by the similarities to motivational interviewing from the coaching world. And I know that quantum and the Experience Accelerator resources are absolute complements to the world of a lot of the coaching that many of you do. And thank you, Brianna, for your comments around power over and power with, that it's really demanding and very demeaning. And that power really opens up with a lot of questioning. And I think that's a lot of what all of you as coaches bring to the table. And just this showing of interest in another has a huge impact on changing the world of compassion. It changes the world of empathy. It changes the world of energy to create. That you may think this is a small little technology one-on-one negotiation, but it does impact the nervous system of the collective, that we can be much more compassionate to others. We have this innate desire to be compassionate. We have this innate desire to want to create. And sometimes it just takes a little time to prepare ourselves. So let's go to the page of the micro-learning that I'm going to introduce all of you to. And many of you have seen this already. But as I end my live scenarios and sessions with you, I just wanted to show you that my classroom is here, available to any of you 24/7. So just as an example, click on the micro-learning audio course, which is an audio course that you can download and that you can actually listen to on your phone, in the car, anywhere that you are. So this is an audio course. Those of you who may want to even teach it to someone else in your group or someone else in your situation. So there's products that you can download, a workbook and a sharing manual, and there's a whole playing list here. And this is an audio course. So now let's look at some of the products that we've developed in the Experience Accelerator. So one of the courses is called Negotiation 4.0. And we have split this into 2 parts, because a lot of this is this first part 1. You find this on the Experience Accelerator website and you participate, just as Sarah said. You sign up, you do your lessons, you practice with a semi-tutor, and then you also set up a time to actually role play and practice your behaviors, and then you get personalized feedback. Part 2 is also here, and that you can also, this is really especially useful when you are in a negotiation itself and you're thinking about, how am I negotiating? The first part has a lot to do with preparation. This part has to do with your actual scripting and the steps in the process itself. Now let's go back to the Agile Collaboration class. This is the one that Sarah has been referring to, that Carla took part in. And basically, this actually does a lot of work on exactly the behaviors that Sarah just outlined for us, that you set a goal for yourself. These are the behaviors that you would like to practice. And this is more about practice and getting individualized feedback. So this is another course that you could use if you, in particular, are looking at particular project management or team issues that you would like to discover. And then let's go back to the page that actually go way down to, let's go to the book for a second. The book Quantum Negotiation is found on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and it's published by Wiley, so you can also find it on theirs. But there's also a Kindle edition. There is also an audio version. And this book is really, I would say, the handbook that has come out of the 20, 30 years that I've been working in the negotiation and in the applied negotiation world in business and in executive education. And it really looks at how do we understand more of who we are and why we want something and how we're going to behave, and then how and what if a negotiation fails? What is our plan B? So there's a lot of materials in the book that basically help you plan a negotiation and help you coach yourself. So let's also go back to the Experience Accelerator page, way on the bottom where it says additional communication, feedback, and microlearning at the Experience Accelerator. And here are a whole other set of courses that you can find on the Experience Accelerator that can have to do with leading change, can be an introduction to coaching, it's managing difficult conversations, delivering feedback, and building trust. So a lot of these materials are available to us 24/7. So we just wanted to be able to introduce all of this to you, and we will be in touch with those of you who did register on the Eventbrite. We will do a follow-up and send you all of these links as well. And just wanted to see if there are any questions or comments, and I'd like you to join me, Sarah.
I've not gone down the pub yet, Karen.
Oh, good. Right. It's afternoon over there. You should be ready to go.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. And it's even sunny.
Awesome. Any comments, Sarah, you would like to make?
No, I just wanted to say thank you, Karen, both for today, which has been an amazing opportunity to spend time with you and kind of, do what we do best, which is kind of role play. I think what we're trying to teach, and then just more generally for your collaboration over the past couple of years. Last year was particularly challenging, I think, for obvious reasons, and just your positive intent, your optimism, and your smarts just make you a fantastic collaboration partner. So thank you.
Well, I thank you too. And I can't remember, maybe you introduced me to this idea of ed tech several years ago. And I have to say that there's something very powerful in terms of two things. One is that a person gets to practice in front of a video themselves. And then also you get to actually get personalized feedback, and that you actually get to practice with someone live. And we used to do this in massive quantities in huge MBA, EMBA programs. But there's something very unique about getting your own personal feedback. And the science behind this is so deep, and we don't have time to, and a lot of people don't even have interest in the science. But what goes on behind the scenes in terms of the science of the new ed tech approach and how AI is helping us with soft skills is just phenomenal. It's so powerful how much that is changing in the last several years. So any closing comments you'd like to make just about ed tech in general?
No, I mean, I think it's just super exciting. There are a few duds out there, and then there's some real jewels, and it's a little counterintuitive, like you say, Karen, that the thought of bringing machine learning or AI to something which is innately human.
Mm-hmm.
And yet when you can say, Chris, did you realize that you spoke for 75% in the conversation with Sharon? Is that what you intended? And somehow this combination of just being able to provide some specificity. No, Chris says, no, can't possibly. And you're like, yes. And so I think it's just bringing another lever in the toolbox, as it were, to helping shift behaviors, which we know is challenging to do, but ultimately so rewarding when we can do it.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I just want to close with a couple comments we have here from our various friends around the world. Flora, thank you for being here today. And thank you. Flora says that she's applied our negotiation principles recently, and it does work.
It
And
works.
I was able to achieve this without breaking the relationship. The key is to listen to people and be compassionate. I don't know why this is so difficult, and why in this modern age that some of these basic human qualities we need to relearn, have to unlearn the transactional, the cold, the inhuman ways, the transactional ways we deal with each other. And one of the beauties, I think, of the COVID world has taught us all how human and fragile we all are and how much we do need each other. So thank you for sharing that. And Christiana, I'm so happy to hear that you bought the book and you're going to be listening to it. We really hope to hear from you. And Jeffrey, thank you once again for being here. Jeffrey and I have worked on the concept of quantum negotiation and quantum theory. And thank you so much for being here and sharing this experience. And it is, if any of you are interested, quantum and accelerating learning is a monstrous, huge theoretical and research field. And the very practical, like we just said, the very practical human dimensions, this is part of our quantum world, is how big this is, and then yet how small it is. And we thank all of you for sharing in this experience. And we look forward to staying in touch with all of you. And thank you for joining us. And we will send you all of our contact information after this show. Thank you, Sarah. And have a nice time relaxing tonight.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks so much. Bye now.
All right. Thank you, everybody.